2,266 pages logged for reading this week. That's quite a lot of pages. Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg. This is week 10 of the 4th annual Read What You Own challenge. This is a challenge originally created by Criminali. I am a co-host along with MJ at Reading This Life and Crystal at Fiber Artsy. I will leave a link to a video which will describe the history and my rules for this challenge. Every channel has slightly different rules. I am aiming to read 25,000 pages of print, audio, or digital books that I already own before buying another book. I am going to be presenting these books slightly out of reading order because there was one huge book that I finished. That was The Lonesome Crown by Brian Lee Durfee. It is 1,088 pages in the print edition. I listened to the audiobook. I started this audiobook on December 29th, 2024, and I finished it on Saturday, January 11th. So it took me a while to finish this book. I can't tell you a whole lot about this because it is the third volume in a trilogy known as the 5 Warrior Angels. It is fantasy. I don't read a lot of fantasy, so I'm just going to give you my overarching opinion. It starts off in a fantasy land, sort of like medieval Europe, not quite. It has some traditional fantasy races. You have elves, dwarves, and orcs. The elves are called Vale, and the orcs are called Ogles. Don't ask me why. And there is a coming religious war. They worship a man called Lejean, who sort of fits in like a Christ-like figure. So there's a lot of religion in this book. There's a lot of politics. And there's a lot of prophecy, because Lejean was prophesied to return, and there is a king in a foreign land who has decided that he is going to be Lejean returned, and he is out to conquer all the human lands. And then it goes forth with all the characters who have to go on quests, find magical weapons, and have a lot of battles, and some sex too. So I overall really enjoyed this trilogy. As I said, I'm not a fantasy reader, so experienced fantasy readers may have more issues with this book than I did. I liked it because it was grim. It was dark. He was not afraid to use foul language. That was the author's not afraid to use, or have his characters use foul language. Some graphic violence that didn't bother me. So if that's your flavor of fantasy, I can recommend this trilogy. Brian Lee Durfee is a booktuber. He has a really good channel, and I will link it in the description of this video. I will say my favorite characters in these 3 books. None of them are major characters. They're all minor characters. There is Liz Hen. She is an overweight, redheaded server in a tavern. Early she started off that way. And she has one of the foulest mouths of any fictional character that I have read. And I really had fun with her language. One of my second favorite characters was Beer Mug. Beer Mug is a dog. And this dog is a good dog. Let's just say he saves the day on a number of occasions. And my last favorite character is actually one of the villains. Her name is Inner Spades, and she is a wicked, evil woman. She is beautiful, she is cruel, and she doesn't have a whole lot of mercy. And in the end of the third book, in her final scene, there is a chef's kiss that shows her true inner evil self, and I absolutely adored her for it. The three books of the trilogy are The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown. These books really are one gigantic novel, in my opinion. For the I'm with the Band book club, created by MJ at Reading This Life, I reread Beloved by Toni Morrison. This is the third time that I have read this book. It is rather notoriously banned here in Virginia. The current governor of this state, Glenn Youngkin, a Republican, won his election in part by promising to get Beloved out of high schools, because some high schools were requiring that students read this book. I don't have a problem with high school students reading this book. An intelligent high school student can certainly deal with the subject matter and the violence and the sex. There is a little bit of all of that, but Toni Morrison is such a talented author. She brings what a slave's life could have been truly to life on the page. There is also a rather brutal murder in this story that will make some people gasp. But this murder, however horrifying and horrible it was actually an act of love, because the main character, Setha, did not want this murder victim to suffer the fate of slavery. It is an important thing to discuss. Was it truly an act of love or an act of insanity? Is there a ghost in this story? Does this ghost become something else? A truly brilliant book that should not be banned and should be open for everyone to read. And in high schools, yeah, I have no problem assigning it to high school students. Or I wouldn't if I were a teacher, and wouldn't complain if I were a parent. Beloved was a weighty book to read, so after finishing it, I decided to pick up something of a little lighter nature. I picked up The Galton Case by Ross MacDonald. This is the 8th novel in his Lou Archer private detective series, and it was just the perfect book to read after Beloved, because it's a detective story. There's nothing truly challenging or weighty or heavy about this book. It's just a good story, well told, and of course, the detective Lou Archer is brought on to a case to solve. It starts off as a cold case where he has to find a person who has been missing for 20 years, and he solves that case lickety-split. If you detect something wrong with that, yeah, there is something wrong with that. But that's what makes it a really good detective novel, because you go in and you say, that's not right. What is the real story? That's why you read the detective stories. And I did guess the final secret of this book. And because Ross MacDonald is such a good author, I was able to pick up those clues and discover it for myself. A really good book, The Galton Case. I really like the Lou Archer series, and I have finally finished all 4 books in this volume. Fortunately, I have 2 more volumes in the Library of American edition of the Lou Archer series, and then I can read the books not included in the Library of America. There's a lot of this series, so if you like detective fiction, do seek out Ross MacDonald. One of my goals for 2025 is to read 1 book a month, published by the New York Review Books Classics. This month, I read Last Words from Montmartre. The author, and I'm going to mispronounce her name, is Miaojin. She was Taiwanese, she was a lesbian, she wrote in Chinese, and lived a lot of her adult life in Paris, France. This is considered a novel and fiction, but I think a lot of it is autofiction, because the story is of a Chinese woman, and this is all letters to her former lover. And she's having a hard time adjusting to life without her lover. She loves her so much that she hates her. Yet that makes no sense, but it's that kind of story. And each letter, you get a lot of these pangs of love that seem to me rather juvenile. When I was 26, I was dumped by a girl, a former lover. Did I moon over that loss? Not to the extent that this author does. The sad thing is that she did commit suicide at the age of 26. The translator wrote in the afterwards, she may have actually killed herself over her poor love life and her feeling of loneliness. So you read this and you feel kind of sad because she's describing her true feelings and her inner demons. But you have to, at least for me, I'm trying to say, girl, you gotta get over being dumped. And she didn't. She probably killed herself because of it. I will seek out her other published book in English, but for me, this book was just a little too sentimental. Elena Knows by Claudia Pineiro, translated from the Spanish. This book is just freaking fantastic. It pushed all the right buttons as a reader for what I want in a novel. It is dark, it is mysterious, it is intelligent, and it has a kind of stream of consciousness style. It is third person, but the reader is essentially in the head of the main character, Elena, through the entire book. It does not have proper dialogue, even though characters do converse back and forth. And it's sort of a mystery novel, a crime novel. Claudia Pineiro is known as the best crime writer in South America. And why there is a crime in this book, I'm not sure I would call it a crime novel. Elena is a woman in her early 60s. She is suffering from a severe form of Parkinson's disease. She cannot move or walk without her medication. She was living with her 40-something-year-old daughter, and her daughter one day was found dead, hanging from a rope in the belfry of a church. Her death was described as a suicide. But Elena knows that her daughter did not commit suicide because, I won't go into the detail, but she has reasons to believe that her daughter did not commit suicide, that the police are not investigating properly, that the priest of the church just does not care. So she has to journey across her city in South America to gather help from someone that she once did a favor for 20 years ago. And again, I just really like this book. It pushed all my buttons. I think some readers will be turned off by the style of this book because it is kind of dense. It is not a easy style, but I enjoyed it a whole lot. Against the Day by Thomas Pynchon. I am still reading away at this book with my book group over on my Discord channel. This is or was the favorite novel for Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics. And to quote Debs, she has a channel named Rainier Reads, this book is bat crap crazy. She didn't use the word crap, but this book is crazy. But I'm continuing to read it. Even though I'm now at 800 and some odd pages long, there is no cohesive story. I think I've said that in previous videos, but something is making me read this book. Thomas Pynchon was obviously a brilliant man, a great writer. He just may have been imbibing in some mind-altering substances while writing this book. Swann's Way by Marcel Proust. I am reading about 12 pages a day to get through the entire 6-book collection, which is about 4,200 pages long. And I'm surprisingly fascinated by this book. I am looking forward to reading this every morning. On my live show the other night, I must be feeling the way that some people devotionally read the Bible every day. It gives them a sense of comfort, a sense of something to do every day. And that's what's happening to me with Proust. The story is just slow as molasses, but you're drawn into this world that Proust has created. I am still in his family home of Cambrai and not even actually started the proper story of the novel yet. But still, I am truly enjoying this. I'm making my way through the collected fictions of Jorge Luis Borges. This week, I read Death and the Compass, The Secret Miracle, 3 Visions of Judas, The End, The Cult of the Phoenix, and The South. My favorite story of the week was Death and the Compass. It is sort of a detective story, but not just a detective story. It's a little bit more than that. In it, a detective is brought to a murder scene, and on the murder victim's typewriter is a line. The first letter of the name has been written, and the detective deduces that the name is going to be the name of God. And when there's another murder that says the second letter of the name has been written, he's figuring out that there is a plan for this. And then there's a third murder. And the detective is plotting these murders out on a map. And he learns that there's going to be a fourth murder. And he knows where that fourth murder is going to be committed. So you get this Jewish mystical sense of the names of God mixed with murder and mixed with the police detectives. And then you get to the end of the resolution. And Jorge Luis Borges surprises the reader. I liked it a lot. And I'm just thoroughly enjoying this book of collected fictions. That is everything I read for week 10 of the Read What You Own challenge. It comes to 2,266 pages. That brings my total of reading up to 13,110 pages. And I have crossed the halfway mark of my challenge. I am now at 52.44% completed. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.